Hello and welcome to this new lesson in which I'm going to just explain the differences we can find between male and female bodies which we can see in our favorite manga and anime. Obviously, we're going to find many differences when seeing the different characters we can observe in all kind of shows and animations, but the main point we're going to highlight is that, as always, the female body going to be slightly smaller and curvier when drawing it. Obviously, as I said before, there's all kinds of bodies, all kinds of shapes. We can find characters that are bigger, heftier, more voluminous, thinner. It depends on how we design our character and what we can encounter. But I'm going to do kind of a basic standard so you can move around this range. And well, as I was saying, we can differentiate female for being curvier and male for being shaped as an hourglass, lacking this kind of line, being completely square. Here we have this view here in which I've used the same geometric shape that I highlighted in the mannequin that I drew previously in order to present it with perspective. So we've drawn a man's body. This is how it's divided, and we have the torso and the legs. You can see the similarities between the sketches I did on the left. With the mannequins, we can easily find in any market when drawing in order to have them as a reference, and usually are used for, besides this kind of drawing, to other types like design or fashion design. These are wooden figurines that can make a big difference when situated in several poses or perspectives, in case we want to make a more complex drawing. As you can see in the women's case, I'm adding a lot more curves when drawing, and you can see it's fragmented in several parts that appear in the drawing on the left, in which kneecaps and articulations are represented by circles, and then bigger parts and with less mobility are zones that aren't represented with this series of spheres. It's a matter of practicing and seeing which ones are the proportions and the ideal movements when positioning the character as we want to. I'm taking in consideration that in case of anime and manga, characters, besides being slightly smoother and curves being more characteristic of curves and muscles more characteristic of adult characters, I'm trying to focus in an average body build. As you can see, the zone I'm highlighting in blue belongs to the female torso, green parts are going to be the lower extremities, and I'm going to finish coloring in order to separate these parts into fragments, but it's basically that. Try to position it in a way that you see is easy for you to draw it, and this way you'll be able to get some mannequins with certain mobility and expressivity that may result attractive when you decide to finish your manga illustration. I'm finishing painting these zones I'm pointing out. And well, that would conclude the fragmentation I was telling you about. As you can see, I painted articulations red. And now what I'll do is create a new layer. And I'm going to repeat the mannequin in different poses so you can get a wide concept of the explanation I just did. I'm going to start with the woman in this case. And I'm going to apply those noticeable curves, and I'm going to get her in a different pose, like, for example, sitting. So I'm going to go from that initial curved structure, and then I'm going to add the thighs, which are these long ovals, and then add the kneecaps, which are the second articulations. I'm going to try and smooth every curve and keep going until we find the best pose. In case she's sitting, then bit by bit or using every part of the mannequin to try and situate it before doing any previous sketch. As you can see, it has a more high-angled perspective, so the lower extremities will be a bit smaller than the upper. As you can see, I'm just adding these parts of the mannequin to the drawing we're doing now. This way we would get something like this. So we would have the woman practically finished. Alright, so I'm going to proceed to create the man, and I'll do it on a similar position. As you can see, I made the chin a bit rough, a bit aggressive, so to speak. Notice I made this curveless hourglass on the torso, and what I'm doing is adding all the possible roughness to this build and make the lines as straight as possible in each of the parts of the body. I'm going to make it a bit smaller so it fits in the canvas. I'm going to mimic the pose so you can see the differences. The muscles of the legs are not as curved or as ovaled and is much more straight lined. It's a matter of adding detail, and well, as you see in the lower extremities, I'll add more muscle now, more tone than the legs of the woman that I did before. I'll add a couple more details and both poses would be ready. Okay, so the only thing left now would be to clarify the last part of the chest, which is the most common feature in the subject of the Japanese illustration, both this style, manga, and anime, which would be the differences between both sexes. For example, females' chest usually stands out for being quite big, and they usually overdo these attributes because it's something they like quite much of having this freedom, this expression when drawing. And as I was saying before, they take vast licenses when establishing the style they want to use. Like, for example, that they have the possibility to develop a more erotic style or whatever they want. In the male's case, most of the time we can find men with very low musculature bodies or a toned up body. This would be the summary, so I'll see you in the next lesson.